This is the first in a series of Lunch and Learns that we have scheduled to help you all kind of get hands-on with the tools that you have available in Copilot to understand a little bit more about what is available to you that is being provided by the University of Miami, and also, how you can get into building your own Copilots. So let's talk a little bit about the agenda for today. So in our first session, we are going to cover first what AI agents are and why they matter right now. And then we're going to get into agent mode. So this is Copilot's ability to directly edit your Word documents, Excel workbooks, and PowerPoint decks. And then we will do a demo so that you can see agent mode at work. And then we're going to get into Copilot Studio and Agent Builder. So this is how you can actually create your own AI agents without writing code. We're going to focus more on the Agent Builder side of things because that's an M365 Copilot. And then we will build on that in future sessions and get deeper into Copilot Studio as well. And then again, we have demos on that section. And then we'll cover a little bit about privacy and security so that you, again, kind of understand some of those aspects before you're getting started. And then we will finish off with a question and answer portion. There is a Q&A tool within this meeting. So if you'd like to put your questions in there so that we can kind of track them all in one place, you absolutely can. Or if you want to save your questions for the end, we can do that as well. So totally up to you. And you can also drop questions in the chat, but again, it is a little bit easier to track them through the Q&A function if you're able to. So let's get into AI agents. So I want to get into this before we jump into any of the tools. We want to kind of ground ourselves in what AI agents actually are. So I want you to think of an AI agent as a smart digital collaborator. This is something that can understand what you're asking in plain English. It can pull from information sources that you've designated, and it can take action on your behalf. So it is meant to act as kind of a digital teammate. Sometimes I talk about AI agents as being kind of an intern type of thing, where you can ask it to do something on your behalf and it will. So when we talk about AI agents, there is a spectrum of complexity that we want to be aware of. So on the more simple side, we have retrieval agents. These are going to answer questions by simply pulling from your organization's document and data. So this is like an FAQ, but super powered. And then kind of mid-range, we have task-based agents. So this takes it a little bit further. And these types of agents can automate workflows. They can send emails. They can even kick off and handle approval tasks. And then on the most complex side, we have autonomous agents. So these are agents that can act independently, and they can plan a task, they can execute on it, they can even coordinate with other agents. So why does this matter right now? When we're looking at kind of the large language models that power these agents, you may have noticed they have gotten dramatically better at understanding things like context, and they have gotten a lot better at reasoning through multi-step problems. So at Microsoft, we've built the capabilities of these agents directly into the tools that you already use. So this is going to be things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Teams. So within a university setting, we can look at this and see the potential of agents that can help faculty summarizing research papers or helping staff answer common policy questions or syllabus questions, or even helping grad students analyze data sets without having to write formulas. So that's kind of what we're building toward when we look at these systems of agents. So I want to also give a couple of examples or further examples of agent scenarios that we see commonly in the higher education space. So we see these purpose-built AI assistants that can have a really, really meaningful impact from instructional staff. So you can reduce the time that you're spending responding to questions related to courses or supporting evaluation processes. So then you can spend more time focusing on student engagement and on teaching. And then for operational teams, there's a huge opportunity to streamline activities like onboarding for new employees, or navigating through institutional policies. So this way, staff can find the right information without needing to manually search across multiple systems. And then at the graduate level, we have AI-driven support that can assist with research work. So things like summarizing large volumes of academic content, or even helping to structure written materials in a format that fits with what the student is looking for. And then from an IT or admin perspective, we have tools that can help manage incoming service requests or support workflows related to enrollment by routing inquiries or by automating common steps that we might see in that process. So ultimately, the goal here is to shift the time away from those repetitive tasks that are routine and repeatable so that employees can basically dedicate their time to the things that they are best at, things like instruction, research, focusing on student success. So we really want to shift away from spending our time doing those, again, kind of routine, tedious things and offload that onto these AI agents. So I want to get into agent mode. This is really one of the most exciting recent additions we've seen within Copilot. And when we're looking at agent mode, it's different from chat in that it works directly inside the app. So you would open up a Word document or an Excel workbook or a PowerPoint file, and then Copilot can directly edit your content. So it's not just suggesting things, but it's actually making changes right there within the canvas. And then you have the ability to review those changes and either keep them, undo them, or ask it to make additional changes. So again, this is going to be really different from the Office agents that we see within Copilot chat. And those are great for creating something brand new from scratch, right? You have a conversation with it, you tell it, I'm looking to create, this type of document, which I'll, just a little spoiler, we do have some Copilot generated documents to share with you in a little bit. But basically you're having that conversation and saying, hey, build this for me. But then within agent mode, this is to be treated more as an editing partner, right? So it is going to allow you to go through that iterative process of modifying a document, whereas the Office agents are kind of the brainstorming and creation partner. So first, we're going to look at agent mode in Word. So this is where we can really use it for structured writing and for iterating through a document changes. So you can tell it to update a report with data from an email that you feed it, or you can tell it to rewrite a section based on a specific audience, or you can ask it to review a document and give suggestions from, let's say, a compliance standpoint. So within agent mode in Word, it's using Work IQ, which means it can pull context from emails, meetings, and files so that its output is even more relevant to the work that you're actually doing. So really quick, I'm going to pull up my Word document that we have as a demo, and I'm going to show you how we can use agent mode directly within that canvas. All right, so I've got this document that I've been working on. So in this case, we've got a course syllabus. Now I mentioned that the Office agent within chat can help you create documents. I told it, hey, I need a sample syllabus that I can use for a demo. Please create one. And it did exactly that. So this is all an AI generated syllabus. But then once it's created, right, then we can use agent mode directly within the app to make the changes that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and open up agent mode. I'm using this little Copilot icon to open up the pane on the right. And to ensure you have agent mode selected, yours might look a little bit different. It's either going to have an option that lets you select agent mode, or in my case, I can toggle between chat only or allow editing, which is basically allowing agent mode to function. So this basically tells Copilot, hey, you have the permission to work directly in my document, right? We're not just going to chat about it and give me suggestions. So as I'm looking through this syllabus, I am, reviewing my course overview, and I decide I want this to be a little bit more friendly to a first-year student, right? This is a 101 course, so maybe people are approaching computer science for the very first time. So I don't want this to be full of a bunch of technical jargon. So I am going to prompt my agent mode Copilot, and I'm going to tell it to rewrite the course overview section so that it can be understood by an incoming first-year student. Shorten sentences and remove academic jargon while preserving the meaning. So I'm going to go ahead and submit my prompt. And Copilot's going to take a look at my document and see what changes it needs to make. And in terms of what we're asking for, right, we're not specifically telling it what to write, but we're giving it an outcome, right? I'm describing who the audience is. I'm describing what kind of tone I need, and again, what I want to preserve here. And so by giving it the outcome, it can work based off of that to make the changes that I requested. So we'll see here that it actually made the changes right in the document, right? What you might be used to prior to this agent mode is that it would make suggestions for you in the side pane, and then you'd have to copy paste them into your document. But in this case, it's actually making the changes directly in here, and I can review it, and I can decide whether I want to keep it, whether I want to undo it, or I can even tell it, hey, I want it to explain key terms. So let's go ahead and do that. Have it also explain key terms in the overview. So in this case, it's responding directly in the chat to kind of explain what is going on within this so that if I'm someone reviewing the document, I can understand it further. But we're going to go ahead and keep these updates. We like this. We think it looks good. I'm going to keep this part, but I also want to keep making changes, right? It's not that we are limited to just one. We can continue to iterate on our document as we review it, right? So every prompt can also build on the last one that we put in. So as a follow-up to this, I want it to add a bulleted list of learning outcomes at the end of this course overview section. So I'm going to go ahead and prompt it with that follow-up prompt here. All right, so then if we look here, it has added my key learning outcomes. By the end of this course, you should be able to, and then it gives a bulleted list so that people can, if they're gonna better understand it in this kind of format, they can rely on this here. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit done. I'm gonna save my document, and just like that, I have updated my syllabus in the way that I want to, without really having to do a lot of work, like to think about what to change, right? I know how I want it to be different. I don't have to think so much about what to do to make it fit that kind of context. So the other place, the other place that we will see agent mode is going to be Excel. So just like we saw in Word, we want to focus on the outcome, right? This is a really important mindset shift. We're going to be describing the outcome that we want, not the formula, right? We're not going to say, create a formula that says column A and column B should be summed together in this way. No, we're going to tell it, create a calculator with a payment schedule or build a KPI dashboard from this data set, right? Agent mode is going to handle things like formulas, formatting, and structure on our behalf. So I want to pull up an Excel workbook. I'm going to actually start from scratch in this place. So, or in this case, when we were dealing with Word, I had an existing document, which was great. But in this case, I want to start completely fresh. So I've opened up a blank Excel workbook, and I'm going to open up my Copilot pane again. And just like before, we want to ensure that we have allow editing enabled, right? So if we have just chat, it will just give us suggestions, but allow editing, it will edit the document directly. So let's say in this use case, I need a budget tracker for an upcoming event, right? So I've got the same process here. I've enabled agent mode in Excel, and then I'm going to describe the end result that I want, right? Copilot's going to handle all the nitty gritty of it, but I'm going to tell it what should the outcome look like. So I'm telling Copilot that I want a department event budget tracker with categories for venue, catering, materials, and speakers. And I want a total row with the sum formulas, and then I want conditional formatting that will flag items over $1,000. So I'm going to put Copilot to work. All right, so it already has given me something. This is less than 30 seconds, right? In less than 30 seconds, it has not only given me what I asked for, it also explained what it did for me. So it's saying, hey, here are the features of this budget tracker that I provided. And I've also given you some sample data that you can start working with, right? So not only did it build a table, but it added the formulas that I need. It applied this conditional formatting. So if we look at these categories, this is based on what I specified. It's given us some sample data. And then if we look over here in the variance column, we see that it has added the formulas for me here. And then if I look at the conditional formatting rules that are applied to this workbook, we see, oh, let me actually select. There we go. We have a rule that was created that says if the cell value is greater than 1,000 and it only applies to the cells in these columns, then make it red, right? So again, in just a few seconds, we're able to create a starting point. And then I can build off of there. So let's say I want to next see a chart that will display how our budget is being allocated across different categories. So I'm going to give it that next prompt, and I'm going to specify that I want a pie chart because that's the outcome that I'm looking for. Oh, and let me go ahead and save first. All right, now that I've saved, I think it will let me into it. So using this side pane, we can continue to build off of it, right? We can add this chart, we can add new sheets, right? We can refine different aspects of our workbook without having to do too much manual steps. So again, it gives me a summary of each of these categories, and it has shown that budget allocation by category. I can tell it, cool, I'm good with that. Thanks, Copilot. So the third place that we will see agent mode is going to be in PowerPoint. So this is where we can use agent mode to do things like add speaker notes. We can reorganize a deck into a clearer narrative if the order is a little bit messy. We can even ask it to create new slides based on existing content, or we can tell it to go and research on the web and give us new content, or even rewrite text for different audiences, right? And this is, when we're working with agent mode, we can start with a branded, themed presentation and keep that intact while getting the power of Copilot to make these changes. So let's see how this looks in practice. I'm going to pull up a sample PowerPoint. And in this case, this PowerPoint, we might see that this looks a little bit familiar. If we remember our syllabus of Computer Science 101 taught by Sarah Chen, this deck was created using that syllabus. I went into Copilot and I said, hey, use this syllabus and make me a sample PowerPoint deck that I can use for a demo. So as we're looking at this deck, right, gives me a decent starting point, but I want to make some changes. So I'm going to once again open up my Copilot pane, and I'm going to make sure I'm in edited mode. Oh, it already has my prompts, but I think I undid them, so we will do them again. So first thing I want is speaker notes. So I want it to give me speaker notes directly in the deck. If you've ever worked with Copilot prior to agent mode to ask for speaker notes, it will give you a nice bulleted list over here in the side pane, but then you have to go and dump them into your presentation. But with agent mode, it will throw it right in there for you. So I'm going to tell it to add speaker notes to every slide. and I'm going to specify that I want a roughly minute to minute and a half talk track for every slide. And then I'm also telling it more about my audience. So assume the presenter explaining this to first year students. So this is going to take a little bit of time, but as you probably know, when you are prepping a deck, often speaker notes are one of the most time-consuming parts of this, right? So even though this is going to take a couple of minutes to give you your speaker notes, that is nothing compared to the amount of time you might spend doing it manually, right? Copilot's going to handle it in a fraction of the time. So we're going to give it some time. It's gathering the information, it's executing the tasks, it's adding those speaker notes, and we'll see what the output looks like in just a moment. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions in the chat or the Q&A so far. All right, nothing yet. Like I said, right, this can take some time because Copilot has to reason over the entire presentation, but it does still cut down on the amount of time that this would take significantly. While we wait, where else can we use agent mode? So for now, you can use agent mode within these 3 apps. So you'll have it in Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. Okay, now we have our speaker notes. So again, it took a couple minutes, but still quite fast in terms of getting these added in when you think about how long it can really take. So it has added speaker notes to every single slide, and we have a roughly minute to minute and a half talk track for every single one of these. So on top of adding speaker notes, we can also modify the actual content, right? So if I go in here, I'm looking at this slide, and I like this, but I want this to be a little bit more concise, right? So I'm going to ask it to rewrite slide 3, making each bullet point more concise. All right. So just like that, it has taken these much more in-depth sentences and made them a little bit smaller and shorter so that they are easier to digest for our readers. Because often we end up with slides that just have a ton of text on them and we don't want them to be overwhelmed by that. So in this case, we've made it more concise for this audience. So to recap on our 3 demos, and again, everyone will have a copy of this deck at the end, but essentially we went through our demo in Word where we handled different editing tasks in our document using agent mode. And then in Excel, we described the outcome that we wanted, and then Copilot chose those formulas and visualizations that would accomplish that outcome. And then in PowerPoint, we used it for adding our speaker notes as well as modifying the actual content of our presentation. So now I want to shift to the other side of our topic. We have Copilot Studio and Agent Builder. So when we look at agent mode as being Copilot working inside of your documents, Agent Builder is going to be about creating your own AI assistants. We're going to give it specific content and we're going to give it the knowledge that it needs so that it can help not only us, but others on our team as well. So when we're getting started with this, the fastest way is going to be right within M365 Copilot. So this will not require you to write any code. You're just going to describe what you want your agent to do. You're going to point it at your documents in whether that's in SharePoint or OneDrive, or you can upload the documents as well, and then it will build that agent for you. So a good example of this that we see is, let's say we have a department that has a vast library of standard operating procedures. We can build an agent in less than 10 minutes that will answer questions based on those procedures so that new folks in that department don't have to dig through multiple folders or locations to find that information, right? Or we can, let's say we're on the IT team and we want to build an agent that answers questions that people often come to us with, or questions around usage policies. We can do all of that using Agent Builder. Now, on the other side, we have Copilot Studio, and this is the more advanced platform. This is where we get the ability to create topics. We can connect to external systems. We can even call Power Automate flows for additional automation. And then we also have the ability to publish more broadly. So we can publish on Teams, websites, many different channels outside of just within M365. So Copilot Studio is going to be where you go when your agent actually needs to do something. When we're dealing with our agent builder in M365 Copilot, these are often going to be agents that are going to answer questions. But Copilot Studio agents can take it even further and they can take action. So they can route approvals, they can pull data from external systems, they can create tickets, they can actually do the thing instead of just talking about the thing. So the important thing that I want you to understand here from a security perspective is that agents are going to respect the same permissions as M365. So as a user, you will only see data you already have access to. And then on the IT side, they have specific governance controls that they can leverage to manage which agents are published and then who can create them. So I want to show you just how fast we can build one. So I'm going to pull up my M365 Copilot and I'm going to go to the new agent. So I'm in Agent Builder within M365 Copilot. You can get here through m365.cloud.microsoft, or you can open up your M365 Copilot through the app or within Teams. And then on that left sidebar, under your agents, there will be a new agent or create agent option. So here we see the describe option. You can skip right to configuration, but I want to show you how we can build an agent just in natural language here. So again, we're going to go back to that syllabus that I had Copilot make us for the first demo. And now I want an agent that can be given to the students so that they can have their questions answered related to course policies, assignment deadlines, things like that. So I'm going to describe exactly what agent I want to create. And I'm going to send this off to Copilot. And from here, Copilot is going to use what I described to it to generate the name of the agent, the description, and the instructions. If you skip to the configuration tab, you'll have to designate the name, instructions, all of that all on your own. But in just a few seconds, Copilot can do this from your initial prompt. Right, so it's building the agent, and then I can move on to refine this. So if we look, we see the purpose. We have guidelines related to our course syllabus helper as it's named it. Here's the description. That's great. And then we also are giving it specific skills that it has. So it can summarize grading criteria. It can search the syllabus, provide step-by-step guidance. And then we're giving it step-by-step instructions. So identify the question, topic, search the syllabus for the relevant details, summarize and present the answer clearly, and if information is missing, notify the user and recommend next steps. And then we also are giving it error handling instructions. We have examples of what an interaction might look like. And then we have follow-up instructions and closing instructions. So this is all from that one prompt I gave Copilot, right? Whereas if we were building this from scratch, we would have to go and add these ourselves. So now we get pointed to this configure tab, and this is where I can fine tune. So if I want it to have a different name, I can adjust the instructions, and I can even add knowledge sources. So I am going to go ahead and add a knowledge source here. I am going to drop that intro to computer science syllabus as my knowledge source. Ooh, it couldn't be uploaded. Why? Let's try again. Oh, because it's in use. Huh, I need to close it. Duh. All right. Okay, so it is uploading this file, and I'm basically pointing the agent at the data I want it to use. So in this case, I'm using a direct upload, but you could also have a SharePoint site that has course documents. So if we have many syllabi that we want to reference within this syllabus helper, we can point it to that site as well. And then once this is done, I'm going to validate that this here, the only use specified sources, is toggled on. This is important because this is what tells the agent to stick to the documents and not pull from general web data. All right, so in this case, for a course FAQ type of thing, we want the answers that are grounded in the actual syllabus, not just in, generally speaking, what would a computer science course, what kind of assignments might I have? We want it to be grounded in this actual data. While this is uploading, I want you to see down here, under the capabilities tab, I can add things like code interpreter. So code interpreter would allow students to ask the agent to do things like help them visualize data or solve problems. We also have the ability to create documents. So can it create a PowerPoint for me? Can it create a Word form document? And also, can we create images? And then if we see down here, Copilot already gave us some suggested prompts based off of my initial prompt here, but this is where we can give starter prompts, which give users a quick way to get started. So these are like suggested questions. If they're getting to this agent and they're like, this is a cool agent, what can I ask it? Here are some examples. So it's still preparing my syllabus, but I'm going to go ahead and hit create and see if it can move us forward. My agent was created successfully. We're going to go ahead and test. We'll see that this is a confidential internal only. It's private and only available to me right now. But when I'm ready, I can share this out. So sharing this is as simple as sharing other types of documents within your tenant. So if I'm in this example, let's say I'm the professor for this course, I can share it with students or TAs or additional colleagues that might want to access it directly in their Copilot chat. But again, for now, I'm going to make it just available to me, and I'm going to go to my agent. Might still be preparing our source, that might be why. Let's try it. So I'm going to ask it, when is the midterm? So it's searching just that document because we've specified that we only want it using that source. All right, so here are midterm dates. And then it also gives me more information about what the midterm is even going to cover, which is nice. And then it says, hey, if you'd like, I can also pull what topics are included and I can help you plan your prep. That's a step further that we can go with that if we want. But we can also ask it things like, what's the attendance policy? And again, it's going to pull that directly from our document. Christine, you asked, is the agent generator available to graduate students? Dontavis, I'm going to ask you to confirm because I am not sure from an M365 Copilot perspective, like the spread of who has what. Or Inti, maybe you can comment on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is if it's part of the normal M365 licensing, then yes, we all have it. Graduate students would have a normal M365 A5 license. If it's a separate Copilot license that's needed, then they would have to opt in, to get the M365 license. So for graduate students, it is available. If they don't have it with the current license, then they would have to opt into the M365 program, and then that would give them the required licensing. So I can put the link in there for you, Christine.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
All right, so another thing I asked it was about the grading breakdown, and it gave me the official breakdown, again, from the intro syllabus. And it gives me all of this, and then even some additional details that we might want. So just like that, again, with one prompt and a couple of configuration details, I have built this agent that is ready to go. So on this next slide, I have a couple of examples of types of agents you might want to build. So I wanted to just go ahead and share that so that you have that as a reference. And then we did demo the course FAQ agents specifically. And then again, this is going to get shared out, but here you can see the steps that we took for actually creating this agent within that demo. So before we wrap up, I do want to make sure we cover privacy and security a little bit. This can be a little bit scary, but I know this is specifically relevant when we're dealing with university settings, and then depending on your department, sometimes there's healthcare or protected health information. So I want to kind of ease any of those concerns you might have. First off, agents, as I mentioned, they're built on the same foundation as M365 Copilot, right? So the same confidentiality, privacy, data security standards that apply in our M365 Copilot chat will apply within the agents that are built within this ecosystem, right? When someone uses an agent, they're only going to see data they already have access to. If you build an agent that's grounded in a SharePoint site, someone who doesn't have permissions to that site isn't just going to get answers from it. So as the creator of the agent, you want to be cognizant of what you are pointing to as your knowledge sources and then how you're distributing the agent, because you want to make sure they have the right permissions to access the same data that the agent would otherwise access. So if an agent can't find an answer that's in its specified knowledge sources, sometimes the underlying language model might provide general information. It might just go to the web and say, hey, I couldn't find this in my sources, but here's what I found online. That is by design. That's part of the generative AI experience, but this is something that we can turn off by toggling that only use specified sources, right? If we have scenarios that are very specific to the knowledge sources, or there's like compliance issues that might come up, we want to make sure we have that toggled on. Another thing to keep yourselves safe and compliant, when you are talking within Copilot chat or in the agent in the instructions, avoid putting in any kind of PHI, right? When we're building out those instructions, we want to use de-identified examples for that building and testing process. And then we also want to make sure we're citing our sources, and we want to keep versioning turned on our policy documents so that our users know exactly what's being referenced. So if you are ready to get started on this, a couple of things that you can try today. You can go into Copilot chat or m365.cloud.microsoft. Sorry, there was a question came up. What is PHI? That's protected health information. So if you're dealing with protected health information under HIPAA, you want to make sure you're de-identifying it when you are putting anything into specifically instructions or in the testing phase. That's not to say that your agent cannot intake PHI. It's more that, like, once it's in the agent, it is, or sorry, once it's like part of that conversation, it will be protected within the bounds of your tenant, but that doesn't mean that it's automatically HIPAA compliant either, right? If you share an agent externally and you make it available on a website, you might run into some issues with HIPAA compliance. So we want to make sure that we are being mindful of what kind of data we are exposing or making available to our agent.